want to do more than tease. This is the thought inside the head of newlywed Cherry. When her husband Jerome goes off on business, he makes a deal. He says, Manfred, you can't bed my wife, or you will see a hero. A hero that's made for Cherry. She tells stories about secret societies of storytellers. And as hero, she will make sure that Cherry's taken care of. And if she wants to be all strong, she just needs to have her tell a story of hero. It's 100 Nights of Hero as we see a great old cast and lavish sets, and Michael Monroe as we will see a hero. 100 Nights of Hero is based on a novel by Isabel Greenberg, and this adaptation was written and directed by Julia Jackman and features Micah Monroe, yes, of, well, quite a few movies. It Follows and various others. I mean, honestly, she's had quite the prolific career, despite the fact I've never been the biggest fan of Micah Monroe. But don't worry, things can always change. She plays Cherry, who is a newlywed that just wants to be touched. And I mean, doesn't any newlywed want to be touched? Honestly, doesn't any woman just want to be touched? However you choose and whoever you want to be pleased by, don't you just want to be touched and loved and just left in a frickin' puddle on your bed or couch or whatever piece of furniture you decide to, I don't know, do it on, you crazy kids and your loud rock music. No loud rock music in this, though. This is set in medieval times, somewhere in medieval times. Definitely in medieval times where women are not allowed to be educated. That is a theme in this that is pretty much actually beaten over your head for about the 90-minute runtime of this particular movie. And I don't know how accurate this is to the book. I assume some of it is accurate. I assume some liberties were taken, but Michael Monroe can't do it alone. Her maid and friend, Hero, played by the very gifted Emma Corrin, who is magnificent in this. I do want to say, great dark comedic timing by everybody. Like, it's some of that awkward comedy, but I can definitely appreciate it in this particular presentation. And Manfred, not Mumford and Sons, not Manfred and Friends, none of that stuff. We are talking about Nicholas Galitzine, who was in Red, White, and Royal Blue, as well as Bottoms. Terrific actor, do want to say that. And Jerome is played briefly, very briefly, by Amir El Masri. Richard E. Grant gets to play a full-on dick character in a few scenes called Birdman. Do you trust me? I'm sorry. I need your trust. All of it. Come with me. Very busy at the moment. If you don't get that, you're probably too young to watch this review. And Charlie XCX. Yes, Miss Brat herself. I don't know what that means. I'm a fan of Charlie XCX, going back to Boom Clap, the song from The Fault in Our Stars. And I did love the Hot Girl song they had in Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. She apparently has a movie coming out from A24, and Charlie XCX is definitely a unique individual. That is the kindest thing I can say, but I do like her music. It doesn't hurt she's an absolute fucking smoke show, but I digress. And we have Olivia de Lima, as well as Karina Jagpal. If I mispronounce those names, I apologize. This has to do mainly with Hero trying to keep Cherry from her worst instincts, but also awaken something in Cherry. Help her realize there is something more going on in the world. Women can be educated. Women can be, learned and everything, even as it's frowned upon in whatever particular society this is. Also, I do want to apologize minutes later to all the Bonnie Tyler fans. I happen to be watching this. If you got through that intro, God, you are better than me, because I don't know why the fuck I thought that was a good idea. Fun fact, by the way, a little sidebar, when I was at one of the last indie shows I went to before the pandemic, one of the ring crew that actually used to be a wrestler but blew out his knee and has just been a ring crew guy and was going to move to the East Coast to take on more work, actually came out to that for a match. It was like a 10-man tag in a freaking 500-seat building. That being said, Bonnie Tyler fans aside, let's talk about this. So basically, we see Cherry, Cherry trying to basically be a good housewife, but also want more out of life. Hero knows that Cherry is a good person and just wants to do the best for her. I think you know where this is going. If you have not seen this trailer, and I wouldn't be surprised, I saw the trailer before a few movies, and I actually was surprised this was the Regal Mystery movie. That's how I was able to see it a bit earlier. I actually thought it was going to be Ella McKay, or I thought it was going to be Five Nights at Freddy's 2, or I thought, God forbid, it was going to be Anaconda. When I saw that Anaconda trailer, I'm like, oh, thank God I can avoid that bullshit for a while. That being said, 100 Nights of Hero. We do have some nice sets. We do have some nice comedy. Nicholas is terrific. There's actually a really good scene with him carrying a deer all covered in blood at one point, which for some reason was gut-bustingly hilarious to me. But really, the chemistry between Emma and Micah actually works. And yes, I am actually surprised to report that Micah Monroe did not annoy me terribly in a movie. Though I did find it funny that everybody else was doing a British accent. And she just said, well, fuck it, I'm not going to do that. So, yes, get that paycheck without trying. But no, in all seriousness, she actually fits fine here as a repressed housewife that's trying to show her personality but doesn't feel like, she is able to in this particular society. There's also talk about, stuff in the past about a society of storytellers. And it's really about an uprising of women, wanting to actually just be seen as people, not just as objects. And I will say that some of the, takes on the, the men pushing them down is a little surface level. There are some nice, inspiring moments and some good performances. And while I can't say the movie's perfect, I will definitely say that this movie's a notch below several that have tackled a particular topic like this. I am happy to report that 100 Nights of Hero does get a recommendation. I will get into spoilers here in a little bit as much as I can, but it's pretty good. It's not great, but it definitely gets a recommendation as far as the style, as far as the use of colors. Actually, really good use of colors and really good cinematography, and there's some really good shots and some good chemistry between Nicholas and Micah. But really, to me, Emma and Micah steals the show. Emma, in particular, steals the show. She could also rock that short haircut, and my God. I've seen a little bit of her work in The Crown. I can see why they chose her for this. She's really good in this. It was also nice to see Charlie XCX getting more acting roles, the brat that she is. I already used that joke, so let's just move on. But it was nice to have her in part of a backstory. And really, it was a little messy. The narrative was a little kind of surface level, but I didn't mind it. I thought that there was at least enough with it. It had a breezy pace. It was kind of typical and cliched, but it does end up getting a recommendation, as I said. So it's in theaters really soon if you want to check it out. I'm getting the spoilers. So 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So we start off with Kiddo and Birdman. So, Birdman wanted Kiddo to do well and everything. I believe Kiddo was his daughter, but not too much, honey. You got to marry a husband. You got to keep up the status quo. And there's all this talk about heirs. That's when we cut to, we do have some nice graphics and some nice dash marks of like the knights and everything throughout this movie. We then cut to Cherry meeting with Jerome's family and Jerome in particular, and basically it's like 100 nights to produce an heir. Not obviously you can't accelerate that, but conceive. Okay, and that's basically what women are seen as incubators. Good thing we got by that at this point, right? Right, guys? Right? So that being said, Jerry's worried about that, but also Jerome won't touch her. I'm just going to say, as much as I don't care for Michael Monroe's acting, you wed a woman like that, you probably should do something. One, you probably should love her. Two, that'd be kind of hard to resist. I'm just saying. But nevertheless, we then find out about Hero kind of always being around Cherry and everything, and it's a lesbian thing, by the way, just in case that wasn't obvious with the little hints I was giving, in case you missed the trailer and are not familiar with the book, which I'm not, but you could just tell pretty much by looking at the poster and gleaming one trailer that we were going to get a lesbian type thing. We do get a few little hints that there could be a little more, and that perhaps Cherry had been lying to herself and Hero helped awaken something in her. Hero also, anytime Cherry feels like she's in trouble or in an uncomfortable situation, always make sure to tell her to finish a story because she's Cody Rhodes back in the medieval days. There are no people that are not wrestling fans that are going to understand what the fuck I'm saying. But Jerome has a friend, Manfred, that shows up, Nicholas, and basically he's had issues and he's had relationship issues, and a deal is struck. 100 nights. If you can get my wife to swing to your side within 100 nights, okay, cool. And by the way, I want an heir because I don't want to produce one. And if you can do that, guess what? You will get my castle. And if I win, then basically I get an heir from one of the women. He gets an heir one way or another. He gets an heir either from one of the women that Nicholas knows, or from Cherried. Basically, the idea is he wants an heir. He wants an heir without actually having to put in the twerk himself. The work. That's the word it was. And then, basically, Cherried, for her heresy and her cheating and her wandering harlot ways. Harlot is a word that is used in this. I'm trying to bring that word back to the forefront for some reason because that word has seemingly just meant something to me, like it's just silly. That being said, that's the deal struck. Nicholas gets the castle, and he could possibly get Cherried. Jerome wants an heir, and they use her in an incubator. So, over the next number of days, we see, we basically see Manfred trying to impress Cherried, which does to an extent. She's also very repressed, and the repression obviously has to do with with subdued feelings that she has for Hero, because it's pretty goddamn obvious there are some feelings there. And also, Hero's story has to do with three sisters that are forbidden to learn to read and write, but they are able to, and there's this fisherman father that gets this suitor that ends up falling for Rosa. And don't get me wrong, all the women that are the sisters are beautiful. They are. Don't blame them for being drawn to Charlie XCX. I don't blame them. And that's the name that she's listed as. I don't actually know what the fuck her real name is. It'd be very strange if her name was really Charlie XCX. Nevertheless, we hear about this story where, it sounds like the story Rosa the Cunning, that was able to she learned witchcraft, learned this kind of stuff or whatever, was, her legendary story. But ultimately, her and her sisters fell victim to heresy, to witchcraft, that kind of stuff. That's where Richard E. Grant's Birdman comes in. So please, as Birdman. It's kind of hilarious just to see Richard E. Grant at this stage of his career, and a terrific career. He's a very good actor. Been in a lot of high-profile stuff. Just him able to have some fun. And meanwhile, we have Hero and Cherried gradually getting closer. Manfred keeps having weird night terror stuff because Hero actually has some of those same stories that have been passed down over generations and stuff like that, even though you wonder how Hero came into possession of this stuff. If the sisters were in a completely different area, basically the father ended up actually, and I'm kind of skipping over some of this stuff because it bounces back and forth between the story of the sisters, and once they fall, or jump off the cliff, whatever they did, the father ends up writing the stories and actually showcasing them. They end up reaching, through the wind, they end up reaching this island where there's this Wimont lady, I believe that's her name. She's like an elder of this island, and we see her a little bit before this. She's talking to a couple women. One that definitely looks like she could be Hero's mother, because she is. And the idea is hearing these stories, all these stories going on, women's, studies and everything being kept down because God forbid the men can't have the women actually be educated and understand things and want more out of life except to be subservient to them. That's the movie's message. That's not mine. And meanwhile, Cherried is trying to figure out what it's like to be touched because she even says at one point to Hero, like, have you ever wanted to be married? Well, that's not really in the cards for me. And then we get a scene where she kind of tests a little bit. This is after Manfred has tried to get with Cherry, but Hero's always around. There's this point where they're going to drink, and she's like, oh, I'll drink from the flask. And it's really nice because she's protective of her because she does care. I don't think it's that she thinks that Manfred's a full-on dick, but she doesn't quite trust him enough. But we get a point where Hero is basically practicing, like, this is what they would do, practicing kissing, this kind of stuff. And it's nice and it's sweet, and it's kind of hot. I can't deny that. Because Emma Corrin is a very attractive woman. But obviously that's about as far as it goes right there. One, this movie is PG-13. Had it been full R, hey, maybe we might have gotten a Portrait of a Lady on Fire type scene. By the way, if you haven't seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire, you want to see one of the most heartbreaking endings. Good God, that's a heartbreaking ending. But we find out about these stories, all the stuff that's being told. Manfred's having nightmares, so he's not doing all that well. He can't get with Cherry because he's being enchanted, basically, by these stories that have a certain power. And then Jerome ends up coming back just on the night where it looks like he's about to bed Cherry and possibly give him an heir. What the hell are you doing? Oh, it's the 100th night. No, it isn't. That's how much time has passed. And then it is revealed that Hero has done the enchanting, this kind of stuff. These guards, they have these gold masks, and we actually get some pretty good interactions between them. That's actually kind of nice. A lot of this movie does feel like certain things were cut, though. Like, there's a pretty good hour and 55 minute cut, and it feels like certain things were trimmed. But that being said, at least it's expedient. We then basically get it where the women are going to be essentially put to death. Jerome ends up saying, yeah, Manfred, you can have the castle. And Manfred basically also wanted Cherry because he ended up falling for her. He's like, oh, wait, you said you would get the castle and we would both watch her hang. Oh, that's before I knew you. Oh, this didn't mean anything to me. This kind of stuff. He tries to make these excuses. Hero, meanwhile, is basically saying, well, I care about you too, but doesn't really end up saying a but. Cherry then finally says, I'm still here, and I happen to love Cherry. Or I happen to love Hero. Cherry loves Hero. Cherry loves herself. There is something, no, anyway, she loves Hero, and that basically leads to the guards taking the stories. They're going to basically end up being put on a high building, a high tower, Rapunzel, and be sent off to their death. But before that happens, word reaches of, these islands and everything, where that Winmot woman is the elder and is talking to the woman that turns out to be the mother of Hero, who, in a flashback, Hero is telling, Cherry the story. Basically ends up saying, I was sent here to share these stories. I never went back, even after going to the great city, like the fisherman father had, by sharing these stories and all that. But Winmot decided to go to the great city. All this stuff is basically going on, essentially, where they want to just get more stuff out and talk about these great heroic women and inspire a women's revolution, basically, where these women can actually be seen, again, as more than objects and incubators. So, as it looks like the women are about to be put to death, the natives are getting restless. Leave with your heat. And other women arrive from the great city to hear more about these stories. And the natives are getting restless. Hero and Cherry say they did nothing wrong. It seems like they did finally jump to their death, but they were cool with what they did. Jerome doing nothing because he's a ballless coward. Possibly gay. There's nothing wrong with that, but that was frowned upon in that society at that point. And ends up, essentially, we hear more about, the uprising, everything, the women, inspiring each other. And then we cut to a scene with Cherry and Hero just in a weird ethereal place, and there's this weird moon that is going to take them away. Ha ha ho hee hee. Because they're dead. I mean, they died. But they inspired a movement. And Hero and Cherry, now seen up there as two big stars with the moon. Whatever. That's where the movie was just doing something. I go, okay, sure, at this point, why not? If I explain this movie badly, I do apologize, but like a lot of this stuff is left open to interpretation. There's enough that surface level is pretty easy to get. But realistically, I didn't think the movie was bad at all. I thought it was pretty entertaining. It's not great. It has its issues. The fact that it's a little weird, and not necessarily weird in the most, I guess way that would grab you. It's more of a weird way that keeps you sometime at an arm's length, keeps you away. But that being said, it gets a B. 100 Nights of Hero is actually pretty entertaining overall. Yes, for a Micah Monroe movie, that is definitely very high praise, because I have not praised a lot of her movies. I mean, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Yeah. So that being said, B, so let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin, and until we revisit the medieval times and keep women from learning again, let's not do that. Let's treat women as equals. Happy trails to you.